Imagine this scenario. We're both in a car. I'm driving, the trip is going well, we're listening to our favorite songs, and we come to a red light. I immediately decide to floor it and run the red light. You're obviously taken back as I narrowly miss a car that's doing a protected left turn. I ask you why you're upset and you tell me that we almost got into an accident and your life was in danger. That's true. I ask you why else and you say, because it's illegal to run a red light. And who said so? Well, a man said so that we can travel from place to place safely. Man governs people with laws to create some sort of order in the natural chaos that man can create. And the universe does the same, but the universe does it not just for man, but the whole universe in and of itself. All things need order no matter where you are in the universe, but even when order is created, chaos happens anyways. Chaos is part of the order. We all experience human law in a 3D world, and it's obvious to see because we just have to look at the laws that are passed. The street signs on the street, what politicians are saying about X, Y, and Z, bigger spiritual laws. They're harder to see. And it's not entirely your fault because part of it has been really hidden from you. And that's really on purpose. As we speak, there are powerful people that really understand these spiritual laws and the power that these types of laws can bring to one's life. So obviously, it's not going to be part of public consciousness. And on top of that, the average person is way too shackled in dogma to even care about spiritual laws. And it's very unfortunate because they keep reliving the same reality and situations over and over and over again. Let's start with number 1, the law of assumption. The law of assumption mainly states that when you believe something already exists in your life, you'll manifest it into existence. It's about living with the end in mind, but there's a caveat to this. It's not just about thinking of the end in mind. Anybody can think of the end in mind. That's not what actually makes a change. It's about generating a feeling associated with that thought. Remember, the mind and body can distinguish reality between imagination. And that actually gives us an amazing opportunity to bring forth the things that we want. When a feeling is involved, the lines between reality and imagination get blurred. So I'll give you an example. Say you want to visit a certain country one day. Well, how would you feel being in that country right now? What would it look like and what would you do? Who would you be with? What ordinary things would happen? Think about it, feel it, and assume you're already there. You'll start seeing opportunities and synchronicities to start to occur. Here's a quote by Neville Goddard. "The man who can assume whatever state he pleases has found the keys to the kingdom of heaven." He means the kingdom of heaven as in your desires. If you can assume that your desires are already here, with the thinking and feeling that's associated with it, the actions that you take towards that are going to be very natural and they're going to come. And also the opportunities, you're going to start to notice them older or they'll just appear. Here's another quote: "Your assumption to be effective cannot be a single isolated act. It must be a maintained attitude of the wish fulfilled." Exactly, maintained attitude, thought, and feeling. If you have a thought and feeling of a certain assumption that you want to happen in your life, if you only do it for some time or you're constantly checking to see if it's appearing, then that's not an assumption anymore, right? Because when you assume something to happen already, you're not even really thinking about it too much. It's just already there. Think about a treasured possession of yours. Let's say you love your AirPods. For example, you already have your AirPods. It's a normal part of your day. You put them on listen to your favorite song and it's a daily part of your life. That's the same thing you would imagine a certain desire of yours, whether it's a material desire or a situational desire. It's also important to not get sucked into the matter or the 3D as in the present time around you because you don't have it right now. So if you focus too much on the right now, you'll end up being discouraged from your assumption. So you have to act as if the present time right now is actually the past and you're actually living in the future because you're living with the end in mind. It's all about normalizing your desire and the outcome that you want. So for example, if you want to get a nice home one day and it's a nice big home and it's beautiful. Okay, think about that. Assume the family you'd have in that home. Assume how the home would look. Assume the location. Assume how you would feel with that home and also normalize it. In your home, you relax. You do different things. You invite guests. You work out at home. You do all sorts of things. You do normal stuff in your dream home. Another thing is giving it time and being confident in your assumption is very key. Even looking for small things like evidence, it gives you more conviction in your assumption. And these little things give you that strong willpower to continue using the law of assumption because you're seeing your desires materialize. The reason why we use imagery in the law of assumption is to conjure up an emotion that helps the assumption. We humans are emotional. First, when something has an emotional impact on us, our brain just memorizes it and it stores it in. And it's like, this situation had an emotional impact on me. Whether it was positive or negative, you embed that situation and the brain starts to connect that emotion to the situation. It starts to piece it together. Okay, this situation created this emotion. What is the situation? Exactly. Once this makes such an imprint on the brain takes it more seriously in terms of being part of reality. So whatever is real to us is reality. And how do we usually take in reality? Well, we take it in through our five senses. So that means if we can include as much of the five senses as possible in our assumption, it makes it more real and more likely to take place. It makes more of an imprint in the mind with imagery, and this emotional impact, it makes the conviction in your assumption more unparalleled. Like you couldn't tell your psyche anything negative about the assumption because the assumption has made such an imprint on the body and the body and mind perceives it as reality because it has impacted the senses so well, and conviction is powerful. Conviction is just a strong belief. We have to engage as much of the senses as possible as best as we can, through visualization, through imagery. How would this item or this situation, how would it feel? How would it smell like? What would it look like? Taste may be difficult to do, but when we can do this, it becomes a lot more vivid and very likely to occur at a certain timeline. And it's very important that you really hold that assumption with very strong conviction. And you look for small things that really add fuel to your assumption. Because at the end of the day, the mind loves evidence of what you want to manifest. Your actions, your mindset, your energy starts to change subconsciously. Start taking actions towards the things you want to manifest. You start seeing opportunities. You start meeting certain people. Here's a quote by Neville Goddard: disregard appearances, conditions. In fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire, resting the assumption that you are already what you want to be, for in that determined assumption. You and your infinite being are immersed in creative unity, and with your infinite being, all things are possible. This goes back to just forgetting about the present moment, because that's the past. If you're living with the end in mind, that means you're living in the future. You're not living in the present, which is the past. So your emotions and your five senses would not be fixated on the now, the past. They'd be fixated on the five sensory experience in the future. Next, the law of intention and desire. Everything that was, is, or will be begins with an intention. An intention is just a thing intended, an aim, or a plan. Intending is the foundational part of an achievement because you're looking to get this thing done. You have a plan for it. When you marry desire and intention, you'll start taking the necessary steps to achieve something because it's the building block. It's the foundation of you bringing forth a desire or bringing forth a goal. At the end of the day, you can have desires all day, but without an intention, without a plan towards it, that desire is just going to be wishful thinking. And I think that's where a lot of people fall prey to certain law of attraction and manifestation things. They just think if they imagine something to happen and they just breathe in and out that it's just going to occur. But that's not the case. If you ever started something and you never finished it, it's because you had the desire, but your intention wasn't there. Your reason why you're doing it and your plan to get it done, it wasn't there. And this intention, it needs emotion. Add emotion to your intention and this will drive you. This will give you a deep why. This isn't motivation. This is a long-term inspired emotion that is tied to the intention that you're setting out to do, because motivation isn't reliable. Motivation is like you watching a YouTube video and then you click off and then you're motivated for 30 minutes and you're not motivated anymore and you don't feel like taking action on anything. An inspired emotion, that's a lot different from motivation. With an intention, you start planning, you start making moves, and you start seeing opportunities. Next, the law of cause and effect. For every effect, there is a definite cause. Likewise, for every cause, there is a definite effect. Let's talk about Newton's first law of motion, the law of inertia. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. But cause and effect goes further than just objects, obviously. How you are internally has an effect on the world, but also on yourself. Here's a thought experiment. Think negative thoughts for just 5 seconds. You're going to feel it in your body, and maybe it could put you in a certain mood for half the day, depending on how good you are at regulating your emotions. If you want a certain outcome, you have to take certain steps, you have to be at the cause, you have to influence as much of the cause as possible in order to control the certain effect that you want. This is amazing for analyzing your life. If something has gone wrong in your life, you have to look at what caused that effect, right? Operating from first principles, looking at the facts of the situation in order for you to see where your errors were and where you made mistakes. It's basically backwards engineering the steps that led to the unwanted effect as much as possible. Identify the truth of the situation and think about the assumptions that you made that led to the problem. What causes assumptions? What actions did you do that led to the effect that you didn't want? Say you planned on going to a concert and you were so late that you missed the flight. Like the majority of the concert, like you got there and there's only 5 minutes left in the concert. Your assumption was that you wouldn't take long to get dressed. You'd easily find your concert ticket. You assume that there's no traffic. You assume that your friends were also on time, and it turns out none of this happened. Now the effect is that you missed the concert, but in the future you can look at the causes of you missing the concert and change those causes. That way you can have the effect that you want. Another caveat is sometimes your causes are subconscious and you have to do an audit of your subconscious belief patterns in order to see how you've caused situations to occur. Because a lot of times it's easy for us to blame the outside for different things happening to us. And we're not looking at the effect that we've created. Shadow work is very good for this. The shadow work is your ability to identify traits and attributes that you push down into your subconscious mind that either were undesirable or you just didn't want to experience. And then from there, you can do an analysis of how these traits or situations are causing you to act in unconscious ways that aren't desirable. As in, these shadow traits are causing you to bring forth effects that you don't want. And then from there, you can find the attributes that are actually healthy or maybe a healthy side of those behaviors. You can integrate them into your psyche the right way. Next, the law of correspondence. As above, so below. As within, so without. The universe is contained within us, and what we experience externally is only a reflection. How you're feeling and thinking can reflect in your reality. For example, if you have negative self-talk and negative feelings towards yourself, and you carry a lot of guilt and you carry resentment and you carry a lot of low vibrational emotions, all you'll see in your reality are things that confirm how you feel about yourself. All you see is situations that bring out what you have internally. It's based on your internal state. The macrocosm, the outside world, is reflecting the microcosm, which is you. But people in this world have it backwards. They think reality is just acting upon them. They play victim. They don't know about this critical universal law. When you carry a positive energy, you're meditating, you're feeling your desires, and you're going towards them. You're exercising, you're doing self-care, you're challenging yourself in healthy ways. You're being around the people you love. You start radiating love into the environment. The world corresponds with your inner state. You're going to receive and take in love from the world itself. You're going to see love all around you. You're going to see abundance all around you because you practice it and it's within you. It's part of your frequency. How you want reality correspond with you comes down to the frequency that you exhibit. And this leads me to the law of vibration. Everything in the universe is constantly in motion, vibrating at its own particular frequency. Even our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs vibrate at their own frequency. Things that we look at that are solid, like our combs, our cars, all this stuff, tables, they're all made of atoms. And atoms are made of energy. And bring it down to the most base level, a lot of spiritual teachers and mystics have come to the realization that all things are consciousness. That's the minimum material that everything is made out of. With everything made of pure consciousness, that means we're all connected. But we humans are arrogant. We only believe what we can see in the 3D. This is a materialist worldview we've all been brought up to buy into. But that's not how things work. There are literally things we can't see with our limited human eyes. We can barely even see the electromagnetic spectrum. There are literally some animals out there that see more of the electromagnetic spectrum than we do. But fortunately for us humans, we can definitely feel energy and pick up on energy. And it's very powerful. Some people are extremely good at this. They can pick up on energy. It's amazing our ability to pick up energy. But Nikola Tesla said, if you want to know the truth about the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. When you truly understand that everything in our universe is simply vibration, it's easier to understand that the individual self and the world around it are not separate. Rather, they are expressions of a single, unchanging consciousness or reality. Everything is interconnected and all things are ultimately one. The law of vibration explains why we can get a certain gut feeling about someone or something. It's like we don't know this person, but something in our gut is telling us that they have just bad energy. They have like a frequency that you shouldn't be around, and energy and emotions are very interconnected. In fact, it's said that emotions are just energy in motion, and there are certain emotions that relate to certain frequencies, certain levels of consciousness. So there are lower vibrational frequencies like fear, desire, and pride, and then there are higher like joy. Here's a quote I really like. The only difference between one object and another is the rate of its vibration. Even solid objects that we perceive as static, such as cement or a desk, are vibrating at a low speed. Your body, on the other hand, vibrates at an extremely high rate. Our thoughts, like everything else in the universe, are energy, and they vibrate at different frequencies depending on the nature of the thought. Our thoughts are cosmic waves that are so powerful that they penetrate all space and time, and our thoughts and feelings control the vibration of our body. We have the power to dictate the frequency of our being by choosing and directing our thoughts, or your emotional states dictate the vibration that your body is in. And to a large extent, these vibrations dictate how you experience life because they set up resonance with anything that is on the same frequency. So when it comes to our goals, when it comes to the people we're around, we have to understand that our frequencies are aligned with them. So this is why you hear that adage, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you your future. There's a certain vibration level that a certain friend group can align with. And if you're looking to take your life to the next level and your friend group doesn't align with that, then they're not at the vibrational level that they need to be. They're not thinking the thoughts, feelings, and doing the actions that the ideal version of you would be doing. And since they're not doing that, they wouldn't be a match of the ideal version of you, especially if you're truly looking to be the ideal version of you. Think about that. Next, the law of gender. Now, this isn't referring to gender in the traditional, modern way we do refer to gender as man and woman, etc. The law of gender doesn't mean man or woman. This means masculine energy and feminine energy. And in fact, everyone both has degrees of masculine and feminine energy within. It's just that on average women have more feminine energy than masculine energy and vice versa. But there are men out there that just happen to carry more feminine energy than masculine energy. So it's not gender specific. It's just common that it says that certain genders carry more of the corresponding. The law of gender is a representation of the two opposing types of energy, one that nurtures and one that drives. Balancing both these energies are crucial because there are times in your life where you will need to do so. There are times in your life where you need to be more in your masculine energy and times where you need to be more in your feminine energy. A good example of how the law of gender materializes is actually in the human anatomy itself. If we look at the human brain, what do we notice? We notice a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, a logical side and a more creative emotional side. And these two halves of the brain personify the law of gender. The masculine energy is more based on action, logic, hustle, willpower, problem solving, and practicality. Whereas the feminine energy is more based on creativity, empathy, emotion, and nurturing. A good way to implement the law of gender is when it comes to going towards your goals. Sometimes you have to take detailed, deliberate actions towards your goals, and other times you have to envision it, think about it, feel it, and look for it and attract it to you, as in look for opportunities, look for synchronicities. When you do both things, this is how you become powerful. This is how you really build a life that you want. Here's a quote I like: just like in nature, a feminine energy or the seed, then a masculine energy would be the pollen, the feminine, the seed, or the idea. Needs to be fertilized by the masculine, the pollen, or the action. A seed cannot come into fruition without fertilization, and pollen is useless without a seed to pollinate. In other words, nature requires both masculine and feminine energies in equal amounts to thrive. Our world and our feeling of fulfillment requires us to pull from both energies in any given situation in order to manifest the things we want. Our goal is to achieve balance between the two in our lives. And the law of genderism is really a microcosm of a greater spiritual law, which is the law of polarity. Quote, the law of polarity states that there is an opposite for everything in our world. This is necessary for balance within our universe. Everything has a duality and a built-in opposite that cannot exist without the other. If one side of anything has a potential to exist, by law, the polarity opposite expression has to exist also. And think about it. Can you actually know what joy and happiness is without experiencing sadness and misery? No, because you'd always be in that state. And in fact, you couldn't really even appreciate it as much because there's no duality with sadness and discontentment. You wouldn't really know what it is because it'd be such a normal part of you. It's the spectrum. The two operate on the same spectrum, and this brings me back to chaos and order. You have to have both. You can bring order to the chaos as much as you want, but some sort of chaos will always happen. And this brings me to the topic of entropy. Entropy is simply the idea that things naturally head towards chaos. And then when we bring the order, we can really appreciate the order because the chaos is there. So we need both. Just like predators need prey in nature. You know, without prey, the predators wouldn't even be alive. They wouldn't have anything to eat. And without the predators, the prey wouldn't be able to evolve to what they are right now. Because prey tend to evolve into better versions of themselves because they don't want to die, they want to carry their genes on, they want to survive. There's no night without day. There's no birth without death. There's no summer without winter. There is no hot without cold. There's no silence without noise. There's no masculine without feminine. If you'd like the content, please subscribe and give your thumbs up. Let's walk together at this path.